Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's episode review. This time we will be going over episode 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's, the duel between Romin Kirishima and Yuga. Generally speaking, my thoughts on the episode: I enjoyed it. I was pretty excited going into this episode, in all fairness, and the episode didn't blow me away or anything like that, but it's still a very early introductory episode into the show, and I thought for what it was a very good episode. I'm not really expecting the plot to get extremely ramped up for a while with Yu-Gi-Oh! Because not only do you have to focus on plot with Yu-Gi-Oh!, but you also have to focus on the actual card game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And they're still introducing us to the card game. Romin, in this episode, this was her first time dueling, unless she's lying about that, but I actually don't think she is. I think this was probably her first ever duel, and whether she will continue to duel going forward, I think she probably will, but I guess there's no confirmation there. And in her first duel against the person who created Rush Duels, she actually did pretty well. So it still felt, I know I've used the term tutorial-based a lot, but it still felt that way, understandably so, because, again, it's still very early on in the show, and we're going around the horn, Yuga versus Rook, Yuga versus Romin, and next week will probably be Yuga versus GAKUTO. And then after episode 4, after next week's episode, the show is going to be a bit more unpredictable in the dueling matchups. We're probably going to have new characters brought in, and the core 4 is going to have to grow outside of themselves, outside of the initial group that we have seen thus far early on, that they are really focusing on early on. So generally, it was another good episode, building up the world. Romin's brother, I'm assuming it's her brother, that is the person that Romin was sending pictures to, which was probably the most interesting thing about this episode. It starts off with Rook and GAKUTO telling Yuga that Romin is a little suspicious, that she's been taking pictures of what's been going on, and they really need to look into her a little more, because that might be the reason that Goha Corporation has not gone after them, since they were the ones creating Rush Duels. All of the Rush Duel videos have been removed from the Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's YouTube page, so we know for a fact that Goha Corporation is not happy about Rush Duels being a thing. So you would think, let's go after the creator of Rush Duels, let's go after the group that brought Rush Duels to everyone, and let's shut it down from its source. That's the most effective and efficient way of solving a problem. And yet, interestingly enough, Goha Corporation is not doing that. We don't really know why, the kids don't really know why, but they believe that Romin is a little suspicious and might be working as a spy. And so that was the whole theme of this episode, trying to figure out what Romin's true intentions are. And what I find really interesting is, while they kind of concluded that Romin is not directly working for Goha, which I believe, by the way, I don't think that there's some secondary motive here that Romin is working for Goha. So I do agree with that thesis stated by Rook at the end of this episode, that Romin is not a spy for Goha, but she is a spy in some degree, and she is a lookout in some regards, because we see at the very end of this episode that she is sending pictures to some boy who comments on Yuga and comments on Rush Dueling, looks at the phone with a kind of rivalistic, villainous smile, whether this is going to be the rival of Yuga, whether this is the same boy that is in the opening one shot at the very end of the opening looking out the window. Hair color looks a little different, but it was a very dark room, so it definitely could be the same character. Whether it is, we'll have to wait and see, but this is clearly the character that Romin is in cahoots with and working for, and his name is Roa Kirishima. Same last name. This is either her older brother, younger brother, or twin brother, but it's definitely her brother, unless they go down the cousin route. But knowing Yu-Gi-Oh!, they're going to be brother and sister. Another interesting tidbit from this episode is Romin has a band called Roa Romin, where she's obviously the guitarist. She's very well known. Her YouTube videos get more views than my videos do. So Romin is a very much accomplished 10, 11-year-old, however old they are. She's more accomplished than I am in that regard, so props to her there. But clearly the band name Roa Romin is named after her and her brother, Roa. Roa is not mentioned at all by name in this episode. The official Yu-Gi-Oh! Twitter page, Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime Twitter, announced that this is a new character and who will be voicing that character. So that's who she's working with. She's working with her brother. Why her brother put her up to this, or maybe her brother didn't put her up to this and she just thinks that her brother can do something with this information, it's kind of interesting to think about, but clearly there are some ulterior motives here from Romin Kirishima, and how devious those motivations are, we'll have to just wait and see. Roa could end up being a real thorn to Yuga and Rush Duels, or it could be something a little more innocent and harmless. Maybe Roa just is a very big fan of dueling, and Romin thinks that he'll enjoy this style of dueling, or maybe Roa wants to be the duel king and knew that Yuga had the ability to unlock that power, and knew that his sister was in the same class as Yuga, and so that's why he kind of put his sister up to this. I don't really know where the initiative was taken. Did Romin take the initiative, or did Roa take the initiative? I'm really excited to see him, because again, I do think he can be that rival character, and usually with Yu-Gi-Oh! When the rival gets introduced, I think of Zexal when Kaito showed up. That's when the show really starts hooking me. Revolver and Vrains, Kaito and Zexal, Reiji in Arc 5. I'm really excited to see this character because of the potential that he is the rival and what his actual motivations are. That final shot, I know I'm kind of focusing on that right now, that final shot, they showed the Goha building. He clearly lives very close to the Goha Corporation building. I don't know if the symbolism there was to show Goha and then show this character to kind of symbolize that Roa Kirishima works for Goha, or if it was just to show that him and Romin live in the high part of society. They live in the rich and wealthy area of society, and if that will have any sort of meaning down the road, because we see where Yuga's shack is. We don't know where he necessarily lives, but his laboratory looks like it's located in a very run-down alley in probably not one of the nicer parts of Goha City, so I would imagine Yuga does not really come from that wealthy and rich side of town. So whether they'll kind of play on those themes a bit, we'll have to wait and see. As for the episode itself, as for Romin, obviously Romin was the main focus of this episode. I gotta tell you guys, I liked her a lot. I think she, to me, has the best design of all these four characters. I've said that since they first got announced, these characters way back in December. And there were some shots at the end of this episode, because I know the guy who worked on Code Geass and worked on Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, Hiroki, I believe is his last name. I know he was an animator in this episode, and there were a few shots that looked very Yu-Gi-Oh!-esque. And hopefully he kind of becomes like a lead animator and maybe takes some of the Studio Bridge animators under his wing. And so every episode, not every episode is going to have him in it, and not every episode are going to have shots that remind you of the old style of Yu-Gi-Oh! But it would be cool if every few episodes had that style, because there were parts of this episode that design-wise and art-wise really looked like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, and that was really cool to see. So I have no issue with the animation or the art in this episode at all. I thought it was actually maybe the strongest so far of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s in that department. And I really liked Romin's personality. I really liked what she's all about. There's still mystery to her character. While Rook and GAKUTO slammed the book shut on the possibility of her being a spy working for Goha, they didn't figure it all out, because she is a spy, just not for Goha. So I really like that there still is that mystery element of her character, and all of her motivation and all of her purposes in this show have still not been revealed, even though we had a whole episode kind of focused around her. Her dueling was what you'd expect. She's never dueled before, so she uses Yuga's deck. I thought it was actually a pretty funny scene where she was like making all these excuses about how she couldn't duel because she didn't have a deck, she didn't have a duel disc, and Yuga and the drone quickly shoved both in her face, and then she got angry about it, but was like, alright, well now I guess I don't have a choice. Her ace monster was really cool, and something I've liked early on with Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s is the effect names, the attack names, and the actual summoning sequences of ace monsters all have chants. Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains was kind of, it got better as the show went on, but the first half of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, there were barely any monster chants, there were barely any attack chants, like long attack name chants. And that's something that Arc 5 did masterfully, and I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s is doing really, really well early on in the show. So Romin duels with Yugioh. The duel was what you'd expect for someone that's never dueled before. She did have, again, that plot twist of having the guitar ace monster. Getting it from the concert I thought was actually really, really smart for them to write it that way, because usually at concerts, if you've ever been to one, especially with guitarists, they throw their guitar pick. Happens all the time. They play a song, they throw their guitar pick into the audience, and that's basically what was happening here, except because it's Yu-Gi-Oh! It's not a guitar pick, but it's a trading card, and it's someone that Romin idolizes a lot, who's also a top-ranked duelist. And what I liked about that is it was very subliminal. It was very subtle. Subtle's probably the better word, not subliminal. Maybe if there is a tournament in Sevens down the road, you can have her come into the tournament, and maybe Romin can duel her idol guitarist. So we're already kind of expanding the world. We're already world building a little bit, kind of introducing new characters. I like that a lot. I thought it was really, really well done. And if you have a tournament arc down the road, which probably will happen, they're already introducing characters that could have a role in that tournament. But guys, overall, thought the episode was good. I thought it was fun. The duel was, Yugioh pulled out Seven's Road Magician at the end. If he did not draw Seven's Road Magician at the very end, Romin would have won. So even though Romin felt down about it, I thought for someone who's never dueled before, she put up a great fight. She had that secret by having that ace guitar card that she didn't show anyone, or she didn't tell anyone about, which I thought was a really good plot twist. Does she enjoy dueling? Did she enjoy it? See, she said rush duels were fun, but she said she still doesn't really have an interest. I have a feeling that's going to change going forward. She's an accomplished guitarist. She's a very popular student. And I think with rush duels gaining popularity, as they probably will in this universe, I think there's going to be more and more of a reason for her to become a duelist, especially because her brother, as we know at the end of this episode, has an enormous amount of interest in who Yuga is and how rush duels work and everything about rush duels. So she is always going to be linked to the plot, especially if her brother does turn out to be the rival. That would be probably a good sign for her. If her brother is the rival and she's the leading girl, I have a lot of hope for Romin, and I still think very early on, I thought this about every really Yu-Gi-Oh girl, that there is the potential for her to be one of the best girl characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Said the same thing about Aoi's Eyes and said the same thing about Yuzu. I know I sound like a broken record, but I loved her personality. I loved some of the animation and the shots in this episode, and overall it was probably my favorite episode thus far, and it was another really good introductory episode early on in the show. And again, very subtly, they introduced a few more characters that could have a role down the road. I mean, Roa, her brother, definitely will have a role down the road. But guys, that's going to wrap up my thoughts. I really want to know what you thought about Romin versus Yuga. All of your thoughts about episode 3 and Sevens as a whole. We're 3 episodes in. We know next week is Yuga versus GAKUTO. That will complete all of the duels between the core 4, all of the introductory duels. So have your sights set on Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's episode 5, because that's when things get a little more unpredictable in terms of who's going to be dueling, what characters are going to be showing up outside of Yuga, Rook, GAKUTO, and Romin. Thank you all so much for watching. A special thank you to my Platinum tier patrons Alexa Baker, Glen McGookin, Jorge Carrillo, Horace Maye, Goosey Q, Vincent Van Der Veen, Panther J, Smith620, Jorge Leon, Blue Maiden 28, Jarrett Buller, and Gabe G, and to my Diamond tier patrons Jesse Wood, Latrell Smith, Sean, and Melinda Phantom, and to my Egyptian God tier patron Syn Cloud. Thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon, and to everyone who is a YouTube channel member. You guys help me out tremendously. Thank you all so much for watching. I will talk to you down below, and I hope you have an amazing day.